Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, or team up against a guest and battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 1. Hello, podsters or podderoonies, if you prefer that. This episode, as Creed 3 is coming out in the big screens across the world, and of course Micheal B. Jordan is stepping behind the camera as well as in front of it for this one. So we are talking actor-director films. So it's very exciting, and of course I'm joined by our first returning guest, Gary from the Choose Film podcast. How are you, sir?
I'm very well. I'm excited to be here again. I didn't realise I'm the first returning guest, so that's very exciting.
You are indeed.
And nervous.
Yes, we liked you so much, we invited you back on.
Thank you. And Boaz, I need to get you on the podcast as well, on the Choose Film podcast at some point.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes. And, of course, I'm joined by a man who nearly died getting here in a massive stunt in a boxing ring, apparently. Boaz Dix, how are you, sir?
My jaw is fucked, but other than that, and my left eye, can't see shit. But other than that, yeah, I'm all right.
Good.
At least you only need your voice for the podcast, technically, so you can still get through it.
Yeah, exactly. I can be in traction in a wheelchair. It's fine. That Apollo, though, jeez. Apollo can really pack a punch, can't he?
He can. Not in Rocky IV, though.
Spoilers.
Spoilers, yeah. So, of course, Creed 3 is coming out. Gary, you've seen this already, so what are your thoughts, non-spoiler thoughts?
Yeah, I went and seen it last night. I really enjoyed it. Going into it, I was like, Creed 1 and Creed 2 are kind of on par with each other for me. I don't think one is any better than the other, and if it is, I can't work out which one. Creed 3 is pretty much on the same level.
Oh, okay.
Even though, I don't know if this is a spoiler, so you can cut it out, even though Sylvester Stallone isn't in it, but there's not even like a trace of him in it, which was kind of weird, but... Okay. No, it's still a very good film. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, because apparently I think there's some like legal things with rights with Stallone and the Rocky character.
But what's really interesting is in the end credits, it still comes up saying produced by Sylvester Stallone.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so I want to look into that a wee bit more. But I did enjoy it as a debut as well. I think for Micheal B. Jordan as a director, I think it's pretty well directed, yeah.
Boaz, are you excited for Creed 3 coming out?
Oh yeah, definitely. Trailers look really awesome.
Yeah, and of course we've talked about Jonathan Majors on our Ant-Man spoiler special. He looks like a very exciting actor moving forward in his career, and he looks in phenomenal shape for this film.
I really enjoyed his character in it as well, and again, this isn't any spoilers. It reminded me of like a mix between real-life Mike Tyson and Rocky III's fictional Clubber Lang. I won't say any more than that.
Right, yeah.
And I'm not just talking about fighting, I'm just talking about as a whole. So I'll leave that thought with you as well. But he was great in it. He was very good in it.
So Gary, you're a director yourself, and Micheal B. Jordan is deciding to be the director as well as the star in this film. I mean, what kind of challenges would he be facing in this? Would he be leaning onto his like DP a little bit more, or? I mean, have you ever done that before, starred and directed in your own film?
No, well, yes, actually, my first film, because I didn't know I could just go and ask actors, so I was like, I better be in front of the camera as well, so this can get made. It was terrible. It was probably the worst thing I've ever made. But yeah, what's interesting about this, I think he was fighting quite a hard battle here from being the actor in Ryan Coogler's first film, Fruitvale Station, then joining him on this endeavour to make Creed and getting Sylvester Stallone's blessing. and working really closely with Sylvester Stallone with Creed 1. And then Creed 2 is also co-written by Sylvester Stallone, so he's still got a lot of input there. And then, as we kind of mentioned at the start of this podcast, Sylvester Stallone is not really involved in this. So I think Micheal B. Jordan had this hard kind of thing of staying true to these previous films and the roots of these films, but also making it its own thing. And I think possibly, I've no proof of this, but he's obviously going to have to keep it stylistically as if it's in the same world. And I think what we might find here is that, yes, you're asking us to lean really heavily on his DP. I think he might have leaned really heavily on maybe all the crew and maybe the cast as well, because the cast obviously know their characters already. Well, the returning cast, I should say.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see that he's brought his own style to it, especially in the fighting scenes, I'll say. But maybe it's kind of like, you know, when you watch a show, a long-running show, and one of the lead actors decides to direct an episode, and they can go and direct the episode because everyone else around about them knows exactly what they're doing. They know the world, they know the story, they know the characters. So it's maybe kind of like that. But I am also excited to see what he does in the future as well.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't come away going, that was terrible directing, you know. I often think with like cinematography or sound or any of these, if it's good, you don't notice it.
Oh, yeah.
If it's bad, you really notice it. And so this was a film where I sat and just enjoyed it and didn't notice anything odd or peculiar. So yeah, did a grand job, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why you have to work hard when you're doing a podcast rewatching for good films.
Yeah.
Got to notice these things. Micheal B. Jordan has spoken in interviews that he's very heavily inspired by like anime. He's a big anime fan. I know you're a bit of an anime fan, Boaz. I know your brother is. What kind of things do they do in like anime kind of action? What would he bring to like Creed 3, do you reckon?
I don't think anybody's going to fly and do jujitsu, right? So.
I'm guessing like very ultra slow-mo stuff, maybe.
There is some slow-mo in it, actually, and now you say that, I did not know he was a big fan of anime.
I think one thing I see in quite a few anime fights, because I remember I've never really been like a massive fan of anime, but both of my brothers have, Stephen and Isaac. And I remember having conversations with Stephen, and he would say, like, why don't more movies shoot it like anime, like Naruto and the other shows he was in, where he's like, when people get hit, you know, the camera sort of like, you know, is moving quite a bit. It's quite free.
Okay.
And so it tries to make every punch feel like over the top. So, you know, like if it's a really forceful punch and then it stops and then there's a lot of effort, then the camera might shake a little. Well, camera.
Oh, okay.
Or when they go flying, the camera goes flying with them, because you can do that if you're animating. You know, the camera can go wherever. So maybe that's what I would say. Maybe a more active camera.
I can see Gary trying to think back at the fight scenes now.
I'm trying to think back and not spoil it, but there is like some stuff where, as the characters are in the ring, like the audience around them, like everything goes dark, so it's just them in focus, and that now feels very anime, you know. In a fight, like the lights go down almost type idea. Yeah. So there is like some stylized things like that in it.
Cool.
And yeah, there is some slow mo that now. It works for the film, like it didn't. The slow mo stuff didn't
stand out or anything.
Yeah, it didn't stand out bad. The other stylized stuff with the lights was very different from previous Rocky and Creed films. Again, and I could see that was a stylistic choice as a director.
So Gary, then, what is your choice for actor-director film?
Hey, I'm James Lovino, and I'm here to tell you about Alternate Sides, a movie podcast with a twist. I've worked in the film business for 2 decades, but I haven't actually seen that many movies, and this has been driving my frequent collaborator, Sam, a self-confessed film snob, crazy. So every week, while he's stuck in his car trying to avoid getting a parking ticket, thanks to New York City's alternate side parking regulations, we discuss a classic film I've finally just gotten around to seeing. Alternate Sides, a new podcast about movies, parking, and a 25-year friendship, wherever you get your podcasts.
Would you believe it? It's Sylvester Stallone and Rocky 2.
Yes. The first time you were on the podcast, you picked Rocky.
Yes.
So we'll slowly get through the Rocky films when you're on next, obviously. This is Stallone's first film behind the camera, isn't it?
Yeah, well, he wrote Rocky 1 and then starred in it. And for this one, he wrote, starred and directed in it as well. Yeah. And I'll put my hands up. Not including the Creed films, out of the 6 main Rocky films, this is my second least favourite. But okay. I thought it'd be quite interesting to talk about it because there's still a lot of interesting things in there. It's Stallone's first time directing the Rocky films, and I was going to go and see Creed, so it actually tied in really nicely because I was working my way through them anyway.
So what happens in Rocky 2?
So Rocky 2 takes place directly at the end of Rocky 1. Actually, it's like the last 5 minutes of Rocky 1. And we see that Rocky has lost the fight to Apollo. He has become blind in one eye. I believe it's his right eye.
Yeah.
And he wants to retire from boxing. He's become city famous, shall we say, and a lot of like commercials and that want to use him. And he thinks that's how he's going to make his money. And he asks Adrian to marry him, so he's now starting a family. But we find out very quickly that Rocky can't read or write. It's not going to be that easy to do commercials or get another office job. And basically the film is about him trying to pay the bills, find ways to pay the bills and keep his family afloat. Meanwhile, Apollo is absolutely raging that people are saying he technically lost the fight, even though he won on points, and is trying to embarrass Rocky back into the ring. You know, he's trying to use really awful marketing tactics to, shall we say, weaken his pride and his man. I was going to say manhood, but that sounds like something else.
Yeah. You lose a lot of points if he did that. So
he just like jumps him and starts punching him in the balls. Fight me! Ah!
And then Rocky basically asks Mickey if they can they try again? Can they fight? Mickey's his trainer. Mickey says no, but with enough force and bad marketing from Apollo, Mickey agrees. And the super fight 2 of the century, as they pitch it in the film, starts.
So, I mean, initial reactions for me, I think I definitely still prefer the first one. Yeah, I think the first one's probably my favourite still, because it's just so emotional at the end. And yeah, there's some great action in here. I still love like the relationship between Rocky Balboa and Adrian. I just love that relationship. It's so tender and sweet. And it's funnier as well, I think, but also kind of a bit unintentionally funny at times for me.
There's a great line when he's the kind of mafia loan shark is talking to him after he's just got married and asking him if he wants to invest his money in condominiums, and he thinks he's talking about condoms, and he's like, I've never used them, which is just a fun joke in itself. But then later on you find out Adrian is actually pregnant, so it was a nice foreshadowing.
Yeah. Boaz, initial reactions to this one?
Yeah, I liked it. Yeah, probably the same. Not as good as the first one, but still pretty good.
So directing then, I think like Stallone keeps the directing pretty simple in this film, doesn't do anything fancy, but I think one moment that really kind of stood out to me was when Mickey turns up at Rocky's house to say, yeah, we should take the fight with Apollo, kind of about halfway through. And Rocky agrees, and because Rocky and Adrian's relationship is still very strong, you get a big like wide shot of Adrian on the stairs. And all she says that's all she says, Rocky, in a disapproving way. And Rocky then apologizes, and then the shot on Adrian goes really tight on her. So I feel like both shots are quite impactful in her disappointment because she's very alone up there and she's framed very centrally. I just found that quite striking, an image in the film, especially with her like stillness too. So I quite enjoyed that bit from a directional point of view.
In that shot as well, when it goes to, I don't know if it's the wide shot or the close-up, but in one of them, you can see that the top she's wearing says baby with an arrow to her bump. And I think that's very deliberate, as in like, look what you're about to, like, you going and fighting, you could lose, like, you could like maybe be brain damaged or whatever, and then not be able to support what's in my stomach right now. I think that's very deliberate in that shot as well.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really notice that, to be honest. I think just because Adrian's performance is so good in that, I was just totally drawn to her. The Rocky and Creed films are all famous for their like montage scenes, and probably my favorite moment in the training montage is when Rocky is doing crunches and one of the assistant trainers is like slapping Rocky's abs while he's doing it. That was quite funny to me.
Yeah.
But the first proper montage for me is when like Adrian is in a coma and Rocky is reading poetry to her, just things he's written to Adrian, hoping she'll get better, etc. And generally just talking to her, and it's all nice, slow shots. And I feel like Rocky is working as emotionally as hard as he would be in the actual training montage. So I kind of really like that. And then it kind of quickly goes into, the actual physical, training for the boxing match. So I just quite like that contrast. And
definitely
between montages.
There's actually a montage before that as well, which is really nice. And it's when he has to take the manual labour job and he's working in the meat factory. And it's like a day in the life of this. And it shows the strain. Like, this man's a boxer. Like, he's used to physical strain. But this, butcher factory is like killing his back and things. But it also, there's wee hints that he's still missing the boxing. Like, he walks past the meat and gives it a quick punch, a quick jab that shows that there's still that fight in him. But yeah, it's just another one I thought was quite interesting, where it was quite slow, like you're saying, when Adrian's in the coma, and you sympathise for him. But it's ironic because we've all had to take manual labour jobs at some point. It's like just a normal job. But I don't know if it's because he stooped so low or something like that. But
I like those series of scenes where it kind of, he's not yet on form, but between his training and where he is at physically when he's just started to where Apollo is, where Apollo's on the he's doing like the punching bag, he's beating the crap out of it, and Rocky is very slowly, methodically trying to get his 500 in, and Apollo is like just the dribbling ball or whatever. Rocky, because he's got to do it with his right hand, it's just much slower. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the sparring partners, where Apollo beats the shit out of his one. He knocks him out like immediately. He's like, get me another one. And Rocky is, struggling with his. And I like that. And then, you see the montage much later. I think that's what makes the montage like doubly awesome. One, it's like he's nowhere near Apollo. You get this, these series of scenes where it's back to back, where it's like he does not stand a chance. Then all that stuff happens with Adrian. Then you get a montage of him again. It looks like he's wasting his time and probably is going to quit. Trying to make sure she's better. And then it's like she's like, you need to win. And then you get the proper montage, and then he is just fucking excelling at everything. And you get like the entire community is behind him. I like that final run as well, where just all of Philadelphia is basically running with him. It just, it feels, I think, really good. Not just because of the previous scene and where he is in the story, but like, again, a few scenes prior, the fact that he was nowhere near Apollo. They made that abundantly clear when they were showing them, training.
What's interesting about that is that the reason he's so lackadaisical, I guess is a good word for it, and that is because like he needs Adrian to stand by him. He needs her support, and obviously he's not getting it, and that's why he's so like lethargic and not really caring. Another interesting thing though, when she says like, I want you to do one thing, win, and then the music starts up. It's interesting because it's not the Rocky theme tune. What Sylvester Stallone has used there is the music from the final fight of Rocky 1. Which I think shows you that that's the mindset he's in, is everything about that last fight. And then when when Philadelphia is running with him, that's when the actual Rocky tune comes in.
That's cool.
And I thought that was a really nice idea as well.
I'm not a big fan of the running scene through Philadelphia.
Really?
Because it's just annoying now, because it's been ruined by the Ladbrokes advert. Have you ever seen that advert?
I agree, totally. Yep.
Yeah, it's so annoying. Because I've seen that so many times, but it is better without the F1 car the horse jockey, the footballer, the motorbike.
Jesus Christ, where the hell have I been? I have never seen this advert.
Yeah, it's on TV a lot.
I have never seen this advert.
Yeah, there's literally like a massive F1 car going through. There's like a cricket player on the steps.
Yeah, it's probably because I'm not watching that much TV. I think I've heard the advert, every so often I'm on the computer. Da, 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 da. But I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah.
Right. Well, then that's good.
Yes, it's not been spoiled for that. I still think my favorite scene is the final fight for me, and it's probably better than the original for me from a directional point of view, but not emotionally. I don't think. The first film is still better, a lot better there. But the final fight in Rocky 2 felt more intense and fast. Like the pace was very quick, even in the real time rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Like the slugging looks so brutal. Yes, it's not particularly realistic, I don't think. But at times it went too far and was a little funny, especially with Carl Weathers. Like the slugging with wobbly feet was a bit much for me.
Yeah.
But I really like Bill Conti's score. Like he changes it up a bit with the music. It has a more military, war feel to it, which I really liked. The slow motion shots were really effective for me. You could really feel the crunch in those moments. And you kind of know Rocky's going to win before the fight begins. Well, probably, frankly, before the film begins. But what I didn't see coming is how Rocky wins. Like, Rocky knocks Creed down and Rocky falls over with him. Yeah, a little funny. But then it's a race to see who can get to his feet first, which I thought was quite a creative way to find out who wins instead of the normal, knockout punch.
Yeah, it's so tense.
Yeah, I know. Even by 8, he's still not on his feet, He's still, trying to grab the thing. You're like, you've got 1 second after all this to launch yourself up. Like, they really do push that right to the wire.
And then as well, as soon as the referee turns around to Apollo and goes, "You're out," Rocky collapses again. So it's literally he was on his feet for 1 second.
Yeah, I won. Oh, someone catch me.
Just got enough strength just to win, and then boom. And one thing I actually thought was really cool about the fight is you see that the first round, and I thought it's going to be at least quite even. But it's really not. Like, Apollo is laying into him really badly.
Yeah.
For not even just the first round, it's quite a few rounds. You're like, what the hell? So I even felt like he was at a huger disadvantage in this film than he was in the first film. Apollo is taking him to school constantly. And then I like when, I don't know how many rounds you're in. You're in quite a few rounds, and he's just getting the hell beaten into him.
Yeah. Well, it's 15 rounds in those days.
Yeah, and then I don't know exactly where it is. Maybe it's halfway through or somewhere. And the whole plan, because it's at this point you forget about the plan, which is that he is to box right-handedly, and then he's going to switch to his natural, southpaw because he's a left-hander. And I kind of forgot about that. He's just getting demolished, and I'm like, Jesus Christ! And the back talk gets rougher and rougher, and his face is all puffed up. It looks fucked. And then when you get the scene where it's Apollo's still winning on points, and it shows the point, and then Mickey's like, now, and he's just, I love that bit. That was just so good because I like at that point because he's endured so much. Beating and just almost down, and there's no way that he can win, and Apollo is still in good shape, and I completely forget the plan, and then fucking Sylvester Stallone just starts laying into him, and I'm like,
Yeah, I've got two, watching this film and it gets to the fight, I'm always in two minds of how I feel going into it. And you have kind of discussed that, and I think it's because in the first film, Apollo doesn't really train because he thinks that Rocky's a nobody and he doesn't need to, and that's why for some of the rounds Rocky gets the upper hand. But now that he knows that Rocky is actually relatively good, Apollo trains. So I know going into this after watching it so many times that I'm just going to watch Rocky get his ass kicked for 10 rounds non-stop, and that's hard to watch. But there is that scene, I think it's around about round 6 or 7, where Apollo loses his first round, and you just see it on his face, like he is like so devastated and fearful of Rocky again. When the two of them fall down, that kind of knockout with the two of them collapse, I think is a great tense scene. And then it cuts to like Adrian and that, and she's like, "Get up!" and Polly's shouting it from their house, and that was interesting as well. Not to have his wife there.
So is the final fight everyone's favourite scene, or?
I think I don't know if it's just the shot I like, or I'll go for the scene. I'll say it's the scene. It's just after Mickey has agreed to train Rocky again, and they're watching the first fight on the projector. And it's when Mickey is telling him, right, we need to train you right-handed. Southpaws should be outcasted. And he's like, why didn't you tell me this before? And he's like, didn't want to hurt your feelings. But he stands up and he's like, we need to get speed. We need to get greasy, fast Italian speed. And as he says that, he's standing in front of the projector, and the fight from the first film is just projecting on Mickey's face.
Yeah, that was good.
And it's so beautiful and energetic, and it's like, right, okay, we're in it. And then it cuts to the next scene where we've spoken about where he's actually quite lethargic and he's not really invested yet. But that scene gets me hyped up. We've waited so long for them to agree to fight.
Yeah, I really like that as well, because he's, for most of that little bit of dialogue he's in shadow, is that right, in the projector? And then in his final few lines he comes into the light again. I thought that was quite creatively done as well. Boaz, favourite shot or scene?
Probably the run, actually, at the end of the montage, the run up the steps. Yeah. I know that's corny and what have you, and you say it's been ruined by this advert, which I haven't seen, thank God, but I just thought it was cool.
Yeah, I was just wondering where the cricket player was, but, So, directing score, Boaz, what should we go for Rocky 2? I am thinking
8.3.
Or a straight 8 or a high 7.
8.1.
Okay. Because I think it can be a very dangerous proposition, like the actor going behind the camera as well, because it doesn't always go well. Most notably in the Star Trek series, Leonard Nimoy, in the third one, Search for Spock. Not a great film. Fourth one is all right, not too bad. But then they let William Shatner do the fifth Star Trek film, which is dreadful. So it doesn't always go well. So I think Sylvester Stallone does really well.
Is that the one with God?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to fit that in there.
Why does God need a starship?
It might surprise you that I've never seen any Star Trek, not an episode or a film.
Oh wow!
Really?
So I'm just not going to comment on that at all. I would probably go 8.5 because, I can't really flaw the directing. I actually think the film's a little weaker on the screenplay, so we'll get into that anyway. But maybe that screenplay is a little weaker because he invested so much in directing. So you could maybe look at it that way.
Possibly, yeah.
So I'll go 8.5 at the moment.
Screenplay then. As you said, Gary, in your little plot synopsis, it's interesting that they start off with the last 5 minutes of the first film. Normally, I don't like that sort of thing. I think it's a bit lazy. But because the ending of the first film is so good and emotional with Rocky shouting, Adrian, I think it just about gets away with it. Plus, you have that little bit of dialogue when, like, the fighters have locked arms and Apollo says, you ain't getting a rematch. And Rocky says, I don't want one. I can't remember whether that's actually in the first film, but it's kind of cool if they added that for this film. So it kind of does set up the film quite nicely.
That actually is in the first one, so sorry to spoil that.
Is it really? Oh,
yeah.
Shit. Okay.
I think I mentioned this when we were when I was on the podcast the last time. It's because, if we remember right, Rocky, he wanted to win the match, but his main goal was to still be standing at the end of it because no one has ever went the distance. So he, in his eyes, achieved his goal of managing just to show that he wasn't another bum from the neighbourhood, his words. And that's why at that end he's like, I don't want one. In my head, I've won what I wanted. And the whole idea of this starting where the last one left off, every Rocky film other than Rocky Balboa did that. So like from the 70s to the 90s, really? They all do that. And I think it's really interesting because, and this goes into the screenplay, for me, the reason that these films work is because they're not about sports, they're about family and family troubles and like this one is paying the bills, as I said. So if you watch them all, like as I sit down, like, you know, one after the other, it does feel like you're just with these characters for their life, and it feels like one great big story. The main reason for it, I think, in Rocky 2 is because it hypes you up, doesn't it? It gets you, you know, can you imagine being in the cinema, popcorn, you start with the fight from the last one, you're like, okay, I'm pumped, I'm ready.
Yeah, because it's always interesting in sports films, like, you're either going to get either one or two outcomes. The hero's going to win, like, the sporting event at the end, or they're going to lose. You know, so it's always really interesting to see how the filmmakers and the writers make that conclusion interesting. And I do quite like the fact that they do focus on a lot of family stuff in these films, especially when the outcome is usually quite obvious. So, you know, that I feel like that is quite commendable from Stallone.
I think the way sports films get away with that is the main character or characters, depending on the sports film, have to have another goal that's not just the win. So we actually just recorded an episode for our podcast, Cool Runnings, which is another underdog film. And I won't spoil if they win or not at the end, but it's based on a true story, so you can look it up. But their goal in it is actually to gain respect because, you know, they're a Jamaican bobsleigh team. Nobody respects them for that. And then it's about gaining respect rather than the actual winning the Olympics.
Oh, Jamaica got a bobsled team. Yeah, I used to watch the hell out of that film when I was younger.
What a film.
You're preaching to the choir. It's great. Sanka, you dead?
Nah, man, I'm good.
We need to do that film.
Yeah, we should. The first half of this film feels like the first film in reverse in some ways, where everything is going amazing for Rocky. He's just taken the champ to the distance, earned a ton of money, marries Adrian, they're having a baby together.
He's got a nice house as well.
His house has also got nice bricks. I love these bricks. Nice steps. Yeah. These numbers almost add up to 9. That's a good omen. Makes no sense.
Then everything starts to go wrong. He can't read the cards during like the filming of the commercials. He takes a job at Paulie's Beef Factory, gets laid off, can't get an office job, and is forced to be like right back where he started in the first film, making jokes to Adrian in the pet shop. But just this time they're together in a stronger place. Plus, what I find interesting is after each setback, Rocky kind of takes it in his stride. I feel like he knows he's still got Adrian by his side. There are very few moments where he gets really angry or frustrated, even when that boxer in the gym is taking the piss out of him. When Rocky is just taking the bucket away, he just shrugs it off, you know. And then I think when Rocky decides to fight Apollo again, it's this dignity and respect thing, like in the first film. But he's got like way more to lose this time, his relationship with Adrian, because throughout Rocky feels so happy and content with Adrian. So yeah, I kind of like how it's just in reverse kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say, have you ever been like in a room at a party or something and one of the other guests slags you, but they're joking, but actually it hurts inside, but you have to just kind of smile and pretend that it doesn't. I feel like that's Rocky through this full film. You know, every beating, like when it's a knockback from the office job, or he gets sacked from the meat factory plant, or the boxer calling him the Italian chicken, like he kind of tries to just laugh it off. You know, I think he says to Adrian, they must get me confused with someone else, you know, just trying not to worry her. But yeah, I think it bottles up inside him, and then eventually once he's got her blessing,
lets it out.
It's funny when we were talking about the start there, where he marries Adrian and he proposes to her at the zoo. That's just quite funny because like Rocky isn't the most smartest person, right? And in Rocky 1, Gazzo, the loan shark, his assistant, his driver, slags Adrian and says, I heard she's retarded. And Stallone says, Rocky says, she's not retarded, she's just shy. And then the guy says, I'll tell you what to do, take her to the zoo. I heard retards like the zoo. And then Rocky tries to fight with him about that, but then ends up taking her to the zoo and proposing.
Oh my God.
That doesn't make sense, man.
Wow, that's hilarious.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's maybe because he likes the zoo, but
probably. Or maybe it is meant as an insult, but he's like, do you know what? The zoo is actually pretty nice.
yeah, it is beautiful. Yeah.
I think another side to Rocky's journey in this film is this sense of like Rocky is kind of a bit untouchable for me. Even when Rocky has a lot of like setbacks, he just keeps moving forward, keeps going. And after he takes the fight, Rocky's relationship with Adrian takes a subtle hit. It looks like his heart isn't in it really, in the training scenes is because, Adrian isn't fully on board. And then when Adrian goes into a coma, like his whole focus is on Adrian. He doesn't care about the fight. Like the scene in the chapel, Mickey is trying to say to him, "You're not ready. You're going to get yourself killed." Rocky doesn't say a word. His whole focus is on Adrian at this moment, not the fight. And it just kind of doubles the stakes in those moments for me.
We were talking about in Rocky 1 that his goal is to go the distance and not be a bum and gain respect. For me, his goal in this one is actually just to support his family, and his pride is hurting. So that's his two reasons for going. And I think that's why when he's not got Adrian's blessing, he's still going to go through with the fight, but he doesn't care because he's going to get his payday. And it's about having money to pay the bills. So until he's got her blessing, he'll just go and get his ass kicked. And his pride's already hurt because she's not supporting him.
Yeah.
And then that second goal comes back when she comes out the coma.
Yeah,
as well.
I like also like the speech that he gives her, where he's like, I've never asked you to stop being a woman. Don't ask me to stop being a man. And he was like, I just want to provide. You shouldn't be going back to work. The kids need we're going to have a kid. They need nice things. I'm going nowhere. He's like, I'm spiraling down, And I do appreciate that, where it's like this fight, it's not something he feels at that point that he wants to do, or it's something like he feels he needs to do. He needs to do, to provide for his family. But she's not on board this with him, which is, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I really like that scene as well, but I feel like it's an interesting scene watching it with a contemporary eye, because it's like woman stays home, cooks, looks after baby, man provides, and you're not letting me do that. And she's like, I'll get a job at the pet shop, and he's really hurt by that. I feel for him, and I totally can relate to it. I just think it's an interesting scene nowadays, where like the world has changed, and how like how would that be written in Rocky 2 if it was made now?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's difficult.
But it's just I don't think there's anything wrong with the scene. It's not saying anything wrong, but it was just a different time, and the script shows the time that it's set in.
Yeah. I'm not sure you would change too much. I feel like you just change a bit of the wording there, and it will still work. But then Adrian wakes up and says, "Win." It's quite a cool, rousing moment, and it's supposed to feel like unexpected, but it just doesn't feel very plausible. She knows Rocky is practically blind in his right eye. She's just survived coming out of a coma and has a newborn baby now. When Rocky asks Adrian if he should take the fight with Creed, most people would say, hell no. Yes, that moment was cool dramatically, but not entirely very plausible. Do you guys agree with that, or do you just roll with it?
I kind of rolled with it. I guess you could say, yeah, I suppose it makes sense. You haven't had her have a moment of realization that this is something that she wants him to do. She's been very much against it the whole movie, and worried for his safety. You don't feel like he's convinced her, or nearly half convinced her. So, yeah, so I can kind of get that. So when she wakes up, it's a great thing for her to say, but I guess that's a fair criticism. Like, why is she saying that? I guess.
Yeah, I would say it's a fair criticism as well. Yeah. To play devil's advocate on it, I would also say maybe that it's not Rocky that changes her mind. Maybe it's Polly, because Polly goes to her and has that conversation with her in the pet shop just before she goes into her coma and has the baby and goes into her coma. Yeah, so true. He's like, he's going to get hurt because of you. Like So maybe it didn't come from Rocky, it came from Polly.
That's a good point.
The other thing, and I don't know because I've never been in a coma, but has she been in that coma thinking about that? I know that sounds really silly.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Possibly.
Yeah, I suppose you could do what's in some of those cheesy films of just have that repeated. Like, I don't know, in her mind, it's like, oh, you're going to get him hurt. You're going to get him hurt.
Coma dream sequence.
Believe in him.
I mean, does this film like lack a bit of Paulie and Apollo for you guys? I personally would have wanted a little bit more Apollo and that relationship with his wife, because there's clearly some tension there between those two, especially in that first scene.
I actually didn't mind the amount of Apollo.
Okay.
I guess you could give him more if you wanted to make him a little more like rounded and sympathetic and less sort of bitter. And I do feel like he was very interesting in the first one. I think he's interesting in this one as well, actually. There's a completely different angle. Like, one was the promoter side of him, of just, I just want to find the next biggest fighter. And this one, he is diehard, like, he feels like he's been shamed, and he needs to get respect back. I guess, you could lean into that more. I think out of those two characters you were saying, like Paulie, I kind of miss the most. I do wish there was a lot more Paulie, because he was quite endearing and funny, yet kind of you were worried about him and for him, and what he would do, because he was a fucking mess, and that is really lacking in the second one.
There's an interesting line in Creed 1 about Paulie, and Rocky says, "Yeah, he was my best friend, but he wasn't too friendly." And I think that sums up Paulie there. In regards to Apollo as well, I think you're right, Martin. Every scene that Apollo's in this, I love. There's nothing that you can flaw about it. From, like, when they come in their wheelchairs after the first fight, and he's like, "There'll be a rematch." It was only an hour ago I said there wouldn't be, but I've had an hour to think about it, and there will be. To the point where Rocky goes into Apollo's room in the hospital wards and goes, "Did you give me your best?" And he's truthful. He's like, "Yeah," because there's no cameras there. Yeah. There's a great scene with him and Duke, his trainer, where he's like, "What you afraid of?" And Duke's like, he's all wrong for his baby. Like, "I saw you beat that man like I've beat no man before." And you could see the fear in both their eyes. Yeah. Just quickly on Creed 3, there is a scene where Apollo Creed's wife, and Adonis Creed talk about her other two kids. And I totally forgot she had two other children, because in the whole of the Rocky franchise, it's just before, in this film, where Apollo throws the hate mail over the balcony. The two kids run past the screen, and that's the only time. So, yes, I agree.
Yeah, no, that was true. I think even with when Duke is trying to convince him to drop it, he was saying, my kids are being taunted at school, Mm-hmm. But you don't really see his kids. That's right. I kind of forgot about that. That would have been an interesting.
So we see how this super fight 2 is affecting Adrian and Rocky. So yes, I agree with you. It'd be quite interesting to see how it is affecting Apollo and his wife as well.
Mm. Yeah, and and also just maybe even get a couple shots of his kids in, because he might be like neglecting them by his laser focus on.
Yeah, I was talking to my friend yesterday about the fact you don't really see Apollo's kids in the franchise, and she said, "I'm sure there's a scene in Rocky 4 where he's playing with them in the pool," and I was like, "Nope, that's his two dogs."
Jesus Christ.
The dogs get more screen time than his children.
He does not give a damn about his kids.
No.
Yeah.
There must be a deleted scene where the dogs are crying after he dies.
Yeah. Sitting at the gravestone.
And his two kids are like, "Who was this man?"
And the kids just walk past the dogs crying.
He paid for the house, right? Yeah. He was great.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite moments actually with Apollo is when, like, just before the fight, and he has, I think, the picture of Rocky, I think, in a mirror, and it's a very dark lit set, and he's very still and brooding. He just takes the picture, throws it down, and does a few punches. A very quiet moment, an intense one at the same time. I did quite like that moment. Favorite lines, people? My favorite is from Mickey. When he's training Rocky and he says, "Come on, don't give up. Get that olive oil out of you."
Yeah.
That was funny.
That was hilarious.
He also says that you're going to eat lightning and crap thunder.
Yeah, that was that's probably my favourite line. That was an incredible line.
Gary?
I narrowed it down to 3, and I'll quickly file them out. You can tell me what one you prefer. Well, one of my favourite lines is when the interviewer, right at the start of the film, asks Rocky what he was thinking in the final round, and he responds with, "I don't know, maybe I should have stayed in school."
Yeah.
And Polly says to him just after that, "How's the face?" And Rocky says, "How does it look?" And Polly responds with, "I wouldn't want it." I think I've got to give it to one line that Mickey gives, 3 lines of dialogue, and it's when they bring in the baby, and he turns round and he just goes, "Is that it?"
That was hilarious.
That was
Because, I mean, is he mentioning the hair? Because there's a lot of hair on that baby.
Yeah.
I'm like, he was looking very confused.
Yeah.
I was born with a full head of hair as well. So.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I like the dialogue when they were at, the pre-fight whatever interview with him and Apollo.
Yeah, the press conference.
Yeah, press conference with him and Apollo. And Apollo is just laying into him constantly. He didn't win. He got lucky. He's a lucky bum and all this shit. And it's just going on at him just constantly. And Rocky is, he's just being charming and he's just joking around. They say at the end, like, do you have any derogatory statements to say to the champ? And I like where Rocky repeats that word because he doesn't even know what the hell it means. He's like, derogatory? And he's like, yeah, sure, he's great.
I love that moment when they ask, like, what Rocky's going to do with his money. And it's like, the first thing I'm going to do is pay the rent, get a couple of hats and a motorcycle, and some perfume for Adrian. She likes to smell nice.
And a snow machine for Polly.
So it's kind of this kind of very blasé attitude. He doesn't really care about kind of like promoting the fight or the kind of the professional aspect of boxing. He's just very good at it. That's it. It's just a very raw fighter. Yeah. He leaves everything else to the people around him, Mickey and Paulie and stuff like that.
Yeah, like you could never see, like the way in Rocky 1, you were saying that Apollo is kind of like the promoter, like a showman. You could never really see Rocky becoming a showman. He's like, he's there to do the job and he has to go to a press conference, so he'll show up, but he's not going to, you said he is charming, but he doesn't try to charm the cameras or the people, Yeah,
it's more like he's charming because he just has no sort of clue on, like, the ramifications of this or anything like that, or these fancy words. He speaks plainly, He's pretty sort of a simple man. He's a simple, working man.
The other thing I would just say quickly on the screenplay that I like is the foreshadowing of the bad eye. So, you have the surgeons when they're like going to work on him saying, "I'm worried about the eye," but we don't actually hear that he's blind. And then we get the part where he's playing like stickball or baseball with the kids in the street, and he touches his eye, like trying to, before he goes to take a swing.
Oh yeah. And
then he crashes into the bin cans as well.
Yeah.
When he's driving. So that's kind of a foreshadowing. And then you get that great scene where he joins Mickey at the top of the stairs in the gym, and he's like brings in his finger to see when he can see it. And Rocky says to him, "Maybe it's you that's not got it anymore." And Mickey just slaps him. And he does that really subtle acting where he gets a lump in his throat, tries not to cry because of how, like, this old man has managed just to take a shot at him and got it.
Yeah, I love that acting moment as well. Because it kind of just means so much to him. Like, that's all he knows. I think he mentions he just wants to box, just anything to do with boxing. And I'm saying that he takes everything in his stride, but I feel like that's very much for show for everyone else. Like, inside he is struggling in moments. Like, he just wants to be around boxing, and that in that scene especially, it's very much an unraveling a little bit. And he only really does that to Mickey and Adrian, where he kind of opens up. To everyone else, there is a bit of a show there with kind of his ignorance, with his humor.
I think the line he says is, "I spent my whole life trying to get a career, and now I've got one. You're telling me it's over." I thought that was quite an interesting line of dialogue.
Screenplay score, Boaz, what should we go for? I still think it's pretty good. I prefer the first one from a writing point of view as well. It's just the Adrian thing where she just says win is a tad frustrating for me. I get it, that it's very rousing, and it's definitely works in the film, but when you think about it a bit more, because you do have thinking time through that after that moment because of all the montages. So I would probably go like a 7.7 or something.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Gary?
I'm actually going to go a wee bit lower. I'm going to go maybe, since we're doing proper decimal points, I'm going to go maybe a 7.2.
Okay.
And the reason for that, I think the dialogue's great. I think there's like lots of like meaning behind the words, and like we said about the little bit of foreshadowing and stuff like that. That's all great. I think we spend too much time on the fact that he can't provide for his family, like the bills and the work and try to find a job, that it really slows the pace down. That then you're still waiting for him to fight, and then when he finally agrees to fight, he's lethargic, his heart's not in it, and so you're always like, come on, get to it. But it does work, because then when she says win, we are all just like, finally.
Yeah.
You know, but I think we spend too much time there that the pacing really slows. So that's why I'm going to go for a 7.2.
So acting then, I think you mentioned it already, Gary, with the scene, the marriage proposal in the zoo. I do find that really like sweet and innocent in that scene, and certainly in this franchise as well. Like the acting, I'm not sure you get more sweetness and innocence from any other characters, to be honest. And yeah, the scene that encapsulates that the most is the proposal scene for me.
Yeah.
Where Rocky proposes to Adrian in kind of this sweet off the cuff way to Adrian, like he has no idea really what he's doing at the zoo in the snow. He just says, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind marrying me very much.
Yeah.
What do you say? If you wouldn't mind marrying me too much. You know, there's enough sweetness and humor in there from Stallone's acting that it works quite well for me.
The line before that, he's like, I'm wondering what are you doing for the next like 40 or 50 years? Like that's his first way to get into that.
That was good. Yeah. I enjoyed that.
I heard somewhere, I can't remember what it was, that basically someone said the reason that Sylvester Stallone as Rocky works is because the closest character to that is probably someone like Forrest Gump. He's not as silly as Forrest Gump, but because he doesn't quite know what he's doing, there's that charm and that stupidity, but he's just a lovable character that we embrace that. And I think that's why that scene that Martin's talking about works really well. You know, it's like he's fumbling his words, but you know what he's trying to ask her, and we go along with that.
I love Burgess Meredith as Mickey.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Even though I thought he was going to keel over from a heart attack at any moment. I mean, the guy looks old and ill in this film. But there's a lot of great scenes. Gary, you mentioned the funny one where he sees the baby. And then I kind of like the end of that scene. When she does say win, he's like, yes, let's go, or something. And it's like, again, a great funny moment. But I think he does bring some kind of great heart and emotion as well, of course. Yeah. One notable one as well is the one in the chapel where he's trying to be very rousing and trying to get Rocky to commit to the fight. And it's really interesting that, you know, Rocky doesn't say anything. He's just sat there in self-pity. But at the same time, Mickey is being very aware of where he is. You know, he's in a chapel. He doesn't want to be offensive, you know, in this place. So I found that quite an interesting dynamic in that scene, especially when he's trying to like get Rocky out of this slump.
That's probably my favourite performances as Mickey as well. That's probably my favourite scene that you're talking about, because he starts off. The chemistry between the two characters, even just going from the first one to the second one, they've got this love-hate relationship. You know, even in Rocky 1, he's like, you're a bum, you've never had your nose broken, you're a rubbish fighter, until he gets the chance at the championship. Then they work together. In this film as well, there's this kind of love for each other at the start, then there's a bit of hate because Mickey won't let him fight. Then when he agrees to fight, Rocky's lost his heart, so there's this hate again. He's like, I preferred you better when you were carrying spit. And then when Adrian goes into this coma and we're in this chapel, it's a great scene because he's like, don't lay down in front of him like some mongrel. You know, you've got a second shot at the greatest title in the world. I'm not going to get angry in a biblical place like this. But then he says, but if you want to blow it, I'll blow it with you. And he takes a seat beside him and he becomes more of a father is this father-son relationship through this montage as well. And I like that kind of change there. And I think from that moment on, where he says, I'll blow it with you, from that to, I don't know, Rocky 3, there is this father-son relationship more than just a trainer. I love that monologue because as Mickey's ranting to Rocky, there's these pictures of the angels behind them. And then in Rocky 5, there's a speech by a flashback scene of Mickey talking to Rocky, and he says, if you're feeling hurt or if you're feeling down, I'll be like this angel on your shoulder. And I think it's referencing this scene here, with the angels and Mickey standing there. It's just a beautiful shot, and his performance, that monologue, is tremendous.
I do love a lot of like the visual stuff. Definitely subtly ties into what's going to happen. Great rewatch value, I think, in these films. So, favorite performance, Gary Burgess Meredith, for you?
Yeah.
Boaz, how about you, sir?
Yeah, I think I'm going to say the same.
Yeah, I really like him as well, but I think I'm still going to stick with Sylvester Stallone because I just really like this character, just this very like innocent guy, and I just love those kind of that montage scene when Adrian's in a coma. I really like his performance there, especially just a great softer side to him compared to this big brutish boxer in the final fight.
Can we give a little shout out to Burt Young as well, who plays... It is Burt Young, isn't it? Plays Paulie.
Yeah.
Because even what he has to go through in this film is quite interesting, because he's never had a great relationship with his sister, Adrian, and then she goes into a coma, and he like struggles to just sit there with her because he knows he's been quite nasty and mean to her. So like there's a great bit where he's like, I can't do any more of this watching business, and then... There's another scene where he comes with flowers for his sister, and Rocky's already in there, and he feels like a third wheel. He's like, I don't know what to do, so he just leaves the flowers and goes home. And there's small wee moments like that, no dialogue needed. You could just see it in Burt Young's facial expressions. It's great.
Acting score, Boaz. Should we go for an 8.5? I'm thinking.
Yeah,
I'm
Gary.
gonna go for a 9. I think. I don't think there's anyone, even like Duke, Apollo's training and stuff like that, the wee scenes that they're in, and also like Duke and Mickey screaming at the ring when like the fighters are getting hurt and all that you just miss because you're so engrossed in the fight. But
actually, I want to change my thing. I want to go 9.
A 9?
I think it's really good.
8.8?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I swayed you.
You're a greasy 200-pound Italian tank.
Right, let's add up the scores then for Rocky 2. Rocky 2 gets 49.3.
That's quite good. That's quite good.
Not bad at all. I have a feeling this could be a tight one.
Really?
That's it for part 1. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 2 to see who wins. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for Twitter at FVF_podcast. If you do, we'll give you a shout out on the next episode. If you're feeling really generous, you can buy us a one-off coffee at our Buy Me a Coffee account. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.